Okay, well, welcome to our last Lunch and Learn for the fall semester. We have a wonderful presentation on online learning, online teaching, both teaching and learning. And so Kim Godwin is here to instruct us. And just thank you so much for taking the time, because this is a busy time of the semester, and we're looking forward to it.
Awesome, thank you so much. I really appreciate y'all having me and y'all taking the time to come today. So as she mentioned, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about online learning and online teaching today. I am the new instructional designer for MTSU Online. Starting in January, there are two of us, which is really exciting. I'm very excited. There's a lot more work than just one person can do. So we are very excited about what's happening with that and the growth that is, and y'all will see some changes coming over the months to come, just in more services that we can provide and things that we can do. Because I teach faculty about designing classes online, I am a big believer that my presentation should be in our digital platform. So I use our LMS for presentation. So you will actually see me working through the class as a part of our presentation and what that looks like. This is one of my development shells. I don't know how many of y'all get to be this lucky, but I have the coolest ever development names because it's last name, first initial. So I get to be Godwink, and that is just super fun in life. So this is one of my development shells where I just create all kinds of things and play with things. And if new updates happen, it's where I go in and learn how they work so that I can then teach y'all how they work, so that you're not having to deal with the learning curve at the same level. So this is my landing page. It is just a sample of what a landing page would look like. And we're going to talk a little bit later about these and how we get it to say my name. But these are just some examples, things that if somebody wants to see how things work, this is the stuff that we give them. So, and we'll talk at the end too about some of the services that we provide for y'all. And I'm supposed to point out, this is our super cute new logo for MTSU Online, and we love it, so we put it on everything now. So we even have temporary tattoos if anybody needs one. So, I mean, right? Who doesn't need that? One of the things that you'll hear me talk about is that sometimes things aren't perfect, and that's okay. And there it is. It's like, where is it? And that's okay. When things aren't perfect, it's just part of life. So I'm going to go into my content. I may be a little too far away. Might be part of what it's doing. And kind of scroll down just a little bit, maybe. So this is our little bit of class that we have going on here. It's just one little sub-module, and then I built additional modules within it. So the first thing I wanted to talk to y'all about today is what are some of your perceived barriers with online? Everybody has them. It's a completely safe space. We're not going to tell anybody who said what, right? So the video, I won't actually call you by name. So as long as they don't know your voice, you're fine. And it's the back of your head, so y'all are fine. What are some of the barriers or challenges that you see presently with online education?
I worry about active engagement.
Okay. It's a big one. We're going to talk about that. What else?
I think about culture, creating a community and a culture within a class, and how that's different online as in person.
Yes. What else?
How about your own work, students doing their own work?
Okay.
Being able to share content in engaging and meaningful ways.
Mm-hmm. When you're in class, you can be in the moment to fix.
Right. So, and I don't know if this is what you're looking for. I've taught online classes before, not developed them, but I got to the point, I felt like I was teaching, if I had 25 students, that I was more or less teaching 25 classes, because I was trying to reach out to every single student.
I call that the individual overwhelm. Like, that's not, I'm sure there's an actual term for it, but that's what I call it, because I can get myself wrapped up in that sometimes too, that I'm like, I want to make this amazing connection with every single student. There are other ways that we can get there without spending so much time.
And I think
how
maybe
it
the other side of that is when we do spend that much time in it and then students don't read what you write.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that balance of,
Yes, that's
I
where it
put all
gets-
this time into it and you're not even looking at it.
right. They want you to value their time, but they don't necessarily value yours. Yeah. No, I get that. No, I get that. Is there anything else?
One thing I do wonder is, I know you can track student progress through the course,
Yes.
but I'm really wondering how accurate that is. I mean, I for my courses, I create multiple videos. And it got to a point in one course where I was looking through the progress, I'm thinking, they're not even halfway through the course and we're getting near to the end of the semester. So the next semester I instituted a policy of, I will check your progress and 20% of your grade depends whether or not you have completed all these modules. But on the other hand, there's nothing preventing a student from turning on a video and going away for 45 minutes or so and doing whatever they have to do at home and then coming back, the next video especially. So, I kind of, that's my concern. I mean, it's easy in face-to-face teaching, the student's there or they are not.
Right.
And even if they're there, something is likely going into their gray matter.
Right.
But to make that assumption in an online environment is pretty hard to do.
Yes, it is. I mean, it's not just a blanket, oh, you're here, you're learning by the process of being here, because that is something that in an online class, whether they're really paying attention or not, just being in this space with other people and hearing things, we're going to pick things up. We may not really commit them to great memory, but we will have at some point in our life been like, I heard that somewhere.
And I guess there are ways of counteracting that, like perhaps through testing, but then you get in the whole debate, well, some students test well, some students don't test so well.
Right.
There are assignments, but then assignments, again, you could look stuff up. Yeah, I mean, that's not quite, so again, that is out of everything related to online education, that is my one primary concern. Because as far as I'm concerned, the online environment can be just as effective as an in-person environment, regardless of the discipline or the subject matter taught, within certain limitations, of course.
Right.
I would not teach surgical skills in, this sort of environment.
I mean, I guess you could.
Maybe with robotics or something, I don't know.
Maybe.
But anyway,
I don't know how I would feel about that.
Yeah.
But
Exactly. Would you feel good about that surgeon or not? Well, for you to cut into. But that's my primary.
no, I think that is one of the greatest concerns that online faculty do have is how are my students engaging with the material that's in the class? And we are going to talk about that just a little bit. And we're going to actually talk about several things. And I'm going to ask for y'all to engage with me, which shouldn't be too hard because we're face to face. So we will be not doing what I say here. We'll be just doing it right here. So we are going to talk about several things during this process. So I know that y'all are the College of Education. So I feel like there's probably some general understanding of learning theory. Probably don't need to delve into who is Bloom. I feel like we've pretty much we've got that. It's here just in case, and I will grant access to this so that y'all can have any of these resources. And we will also load it in, I don't know if y'all know yet or not, but MTSU Online now has self-registration training in D2L. And we will load this into our self-registration training as well, so that if people want to get in there and take a look at it and use it later, borrow the resources, have conversations within the platform about the actual training, some of those things will be set up in that. So one of the things that's in there now is an introduction to online learning and online instruction that new faculty will be taking prior to teaching online the first time. They used to use the Online Learning Consortium, so an outside resource to do that. It cost us some money, and higher education, we got to save money. but it also wasn't MTSU specific. So we are trying to create an environment where faculty that teach online are able to engage with other faculty that teach online, and that MTSU specific information is available in their training. And then there's one on rubrics, and there's one that I'm hoping once everybody starts to go away next week, I can get loaded on contact and instruction hours, because that's one that online faculty have a lot of questions about too.
So when we go into D2L to do that self-registration training,
Yes.
how do we get to
So
that?
when you
If
log
don't-
in to D2L, up at the very top, it has like the general course, like this is what D2L looks like. One of those things at the very top where it says like home, and one of them is self-registration. And if you cannot see that, then you'll want to ask Jimmy to make sure that you can. But if you're listed as an online faculty member, you should be able to.
And who is that?
Oh, but if we're not an online faculty member,
You should have access to it as a faculty member, because it's where the D2L Bootcamp online training is also located. So you should be able to see it, but it's probably something that's been there for years and you've seen it but never knew that's what it was for.
Is it is it an icon or is it actually text that says?
It's text in the top bar, like that main first nav bar that pops up when you first log in. So I can show y'all after we log out. So to breeze through theories, because they're important and we need to acknowledge them, I wanted to just discuss the first couple are ones that are very true to online. They're the ones that we tend to think about the most in online learning. Oh, awesome. See, there it is. She's got it. So the ADDIE model, do y'all know about the ADDIE model? So the ADDIE model is really where we look at online learning and we analyze. The analyze is that we analyze our audience and what it is that our audience will be needing. We design our course in terms of our audience. We develop our content in terms of our design and our audience from the analyzing. We implement any of the necessary course designs and developments and activities and things like that. And then we go back and we evaluate what it is that we put in there. And sometimes means that we got to start all over again, because we realize as we are evaluating it that we did not think about some pretty key ingredients in terms of analyzing and looking at our audience. So that is a pretty base one that is used in online instructional design because it is never complete. Your face-to-face classes are never complete. Every semester or every year, however often that a course is taught, you go back in and you revisit your content and you reevaluate it and you think, what worked, what didn't work, what can I do better, what did I think was going to work and didn't work, and what can I change in order to make it work. And so online classes are the same way. We're constantly evolving. We're constantly looking at what is available, what do we need to do, how can we continue to improve our classes. And you will hear me say several times that an online course does not need to be perfect. It should not be perfect. And we shouldn't keep striving for perfection in our online course, which is so strange sometimes to hear. I'm not saying that you want to put just a train wreck into your class, but we are not perfect. Our face-to-face classes are not perfect. Our online classes are not perfect. And until humans and technology are not the ones that are doing the teaching, we will never be perfect. And a lot of times with online, and we run into this, some individuals that they're so key on it has to be perfect that it takes 3, 4, 5 years for them to launch a class, by which point your class is no longer valid because your research is out of date, your technology is out of date, so you've taken so long trying to get it perfect that you missed a window to be able to actually launch that class and teach it. So the way that I think about the ADDIE model and design in general is when you're designing a class, you get a development shell. Some places it's called other things, but you get a development shell, and that's where you start designing your class. As soon as your class is offered the first time, my philosophy is that you start right then, the very first time that you are teaching it, reevaluating and analyzing your course and making the changes in your development shell then. there are options for redesign through MTSU Online after a certain number of years, but there are going to be things the very first time that you use it that didn't work quite right, or there's going to be things that you learned about after the fact. Or I am very big on let's use new technologies and let's use some fun new things in our classes, but let's not use them all at one time, because if you try to implement 10 brand new things in your class the very first time that you teach it, you will be overwhelmed, and that will show through in your interactions with your students, and that will show through in their engagement in the class because you're overwhelmed and there's lots of things that could go wrong, there's lots of instructions, there's lots of information, and until you feel super confident with it and can convey that information to your students, you will be overwhelmed and they will be overwhelmed and they will not go well. So that's why I say use that development shell to slowly bring those new things in and continue your evaluation and analyzing process. I am also I'm a backwards design thinker. Do y'all do backwards design? So I'm not going to really go into what backwards design is if you know what it is. But I'm really a big believer in that, and I really think it's important in instructional design for online learning. Because you need to have your class built before the first day of class. Now, yes, that is a policy with MTSU Online, so you have to have that anyway, but you really need to have your whole class built before the first day of class. And I actually believe it when you're building a whole new concentration or degree program that you actually need to have your whole program developed before you offer it the first time. Sometimes that is not an option and we have to do a slow rollout, but the entire curriculum design needs to have happened before the very first class is offered. So even if we haven't put every detail into the very last class, we need to know what's happening in that last class before we start this first class so that it is consistent in its flow. And in online, that is so super helpful. So you've taught online, you've developed online. Have you ever caught yourself as you're going through your class adding extra things as you go? Yeah. So there's a point at which we add to the point that our students are actually having more work than is required for the credit hours. And it's so easy to do in online because we can just keep putting stuff in. And it doesn't matter how many times we tell them, oh, this is supplemental or it's not required. They're going to not believe you when you say that. And so it really does become that you've put enough work in there through readings or additional assessments or different activities that it's no longer a 3-hour class, it's now a 5-hour class.
That's one thing I find with online, you lose perspective of time. Because if it's face-to-face, you realize you have 3 hours of lecture time per week. You have X number of readings. You might have a lab or something for certain weeks or whatever. But online, all that time is gone. And you just start piling, or I think even worse in some cases, some modules are just packed and then other modules are very thin. So.
Yes, that absolutely happens. And there's the very rare occasion that there's not actually enough content. That's not usually the way things happen online. It's usually that we overload. And so when we think about the backwards design, we're much more aware of that and how much time we are spending and how we're scaffolding to get our students to the final activities. And I love that I can say scaffolding in here and y'all know what that means. And you know, how we are getting there with their final assignments and are they actually building and are things making sense? Have you ever been in a face-to-face class that you knew where you wanted to get at the end of the semester and about midterm you realized you were really only about a third of the way through instead of half or less? Have y'all ever had that happen in a face-to-face class? Because I have in face-to-face classes that we've gone on, great conversations have happened, amazing discussions have happened, and so it gets carried on and it gets carried on, and then all of a sudden you're like, we should be way further into this than we are, but you let this happen, and so you're torn with that whole, it was a great conversation, I wanted this conversation to happen, but now look at all this stuff we have to pack in. And online, because it ends, because that happens, we can't really alter it as much with making sure the student gets all of those learning outcomes, because in a face-to-face class we can be like, okay, let's sail right past this one thing that is important but not as important and make sure that we get these other things. And online we really got to make sure that we're staying with it. It's not, we're not getting off track with that. So backwards design, so y'all know who these people are. So this one, Defink, I don't know if y'all know a lot about Defink or not. He talks about creating significant learning moments in online learning and how those happen and what that looks like. So this is actually, I'll even click on it and let y'all see. This is actually a super fast crash course. Is it loading? There it goes. It is the 36-page Cliff Notes version of the 400-page textbook about what he talks about when you do his program or you read his book. So if you ever have time, I would encourage you to take a look at it. There's just some interesting stuff in it. He really goes into talking about active learning and authentic assessment and creating those learning moments within an online platform. So I would, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, but I would encourage you at some point to go back and take a look at it. This is your supplemental reading assignment that now makes your class longer than an hour and a half. Right? See, do as I say, not as I do in these scenarios. And then this one is the one I actually want to talk about a little bit. The community of inquiry. Y'all probably know a little bit about the community of inquiry. In online, the community of inquiry is super important during the design process and during the planning for teaching a class process. I mean, obviously it's important throughout to have that presence. But as you're laying out your class and as you're thinking about your class and as you're actively engaging with the students in your class, are we thinking about our teaching presence, our social presence, and our learner presence? Are we focused on all three of those components? Are we very high teacher presence and almost no learner presence? Are we not really thinking about their social engagements that are happening in the class? You know, in your face-to-face classroom, you have those moments of funny things happen, or you have side conversations even if they make you crazy. But those things happen, and that is actually part of what happens in your face-to-face class to create community. And those are the concepts within an online class that it's super important to be thinking about as we're designing and laying things out. Because instinctively we are here and we want to make sure all the information is available and the students have everything that they need and that we're engaging individually with the students. Are we consciously and purposefully setting up activities and assessments and opportunities that promote the social and the learner presence? And some of these we're going to talk about actually in a little bit, but like utilizing their first names. Remember on the first page? That was really bright. Remember on the first, my landing page, my course homepage, that it said, "Hello, Kim." So that is a replacement string. And I'm going to show you all how to do that here in a little bit. And it just makes everything in your course, wherever you put a replacement string, call the student by their first name. And that, even though you're setting that up, now I'm telling everybody in the world this secret because it's being recorded. Even though you set that up at the beginning of the semester, when the student sees their name, that creates a connection with you better than, "Hey, everybody," or "What's up, class," or whatever it is that you put in there. That just makes them feel special. Now, if you find out during the semester that person has never gone by their first name and they only go by their middle name, you're going to have a little bit more of a challenge with that one. But most people are understanding of that you have lots of students and maybe you don't remember that. But if you have that, make sure when you are sending that student something individually that you do refer to them by the name that they choose to go by. I usually get that from my students in their very first introduction, that I ask them what they prefer to go by. So I don't know how y'all feel about emojis or using humor in your class. I'm sure in your face-to-face class you use lots of humor because things just happen and we have to. And being your authentic self. But if you are somebody who's like big on emojis or big on exclamation points or any of those things, it's okay to keep using those in your non-formal communication with your students. So in news updates or announcements about things that are kind of going on, if some great new article just came out or there's a video you'd love for them to check out and change the discussion and have them talk about it, it's okay to use those emotions. And that kind of goes back to the perfect if we are too streamlined and too computer, the student is connecting with the computer and not you. And that's where some of the things that y'all are talking about making that connection, they need to see you. Now, maybe that'll be a video, and we'll talk a little bit about video and audio and things, but some of that is, it's okay to inject an emoji. It's okay to put a meme, appropriate meme. It's okay to put things like that in there so that they can see you and learn who you are and make that connection with you as an individual. And that also encourages them. If you, and I do encourage this, create a discussion board that is not one that's graded, but is just there for students to ask questions about class or ask questions of you, or to just sort of engage in a non-formal manner. If they see you doing that in there, then they're more likely to do it as well, and they'll engage with each other and engage with you. They won't do that in the first week, but they'll do it in week 3 or week 4, once they've seen you doing it a little bit and you responding to them in a person connection kind of way, they're a lot more likely to do it. This information also really helps us think about where we are with our cognitive and our affective. Online is, we think about our affective domain when we're in a class, in a face-to-face class, because we're watching the emotions in our students. We're watching how they're engaging with each other. We're watching how they're engaging with us. We see them when they don't understand something, they all tilt their head a little bit and they kind of raise one eyebrow. Like, you don't get that in online. You don't get to see that look on their face. So we have to be a lot more conscious about creating those opportunities that they make a human connection. And I know y'all know about the human connection, but it's imperative in online to consciously be aware of when we're making those connections and how we're making those connections. And not just us as faculty to students, but within our assignments and within our assessments, are we helping them make that connection to self, or are we creating a correspondence class? I'm sure you've never taken an online class that felt a little bit like a digital correspondence class, but they have existed in the past. I'm sure none of the ones at MTSU have that problem now. So moving right past that. So it is about that. If you are thinking about these presences and you are thinking about your affective domain and you're thinking about your psychomotor and how your students are actually engaging, then you're going to create a better community within your online class. And that's usually where the biggest concern with the active engagement and with the connection with students, that comes in from, were we thinking about those connections when we were creating our content? Content isn't just textbook or activity, it's what kind of connections am I creating with my students through these assessments and assignments and activities that are in here.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I in my face-to-face, I don't teach any online courses,
Okay.
so I'm here to learn. But in my face-to-face classes, before class ever starts, I have them use Flipgrid to introduce themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a way to use Flipgrid in this in D2L? I mean, I could have them go to the link, but you have to go out to go back in, or do you just create your own video and upload, or?
So there's actually a couple ways that can happen.
And I should say, are you familiar with Flipgrid? It is an online platform for video recording, and so you can give a prompt and the students respond by creating a video of themselves answering. So they introduce themselves using Flipgrid, and then I use it as a differentiated assessment for those who, like, if you have dysgraphia and you have trouble writing or what have you. That's another way of allowing students to engage and demonstrate understanding.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, you can use something like Flipgrid and then have it put the links back into the class, because you cannot assess activities that are outside of D2L just because of privacy issues. But yes, you can. And we are trying, this is where I'm like, who are you going to show this to? We are desperately trying. It's something I've mentioned at least once a week since my interview, and I'm to the point now that it's almost daily, that we need a fully integrated media software into D2L. There are some pretty amazing ones out there that do all that stuff within D2L, and the student doesn't have to leave. And it can be done from any device. It converts from that device. It automatically loads and is viewable within D2L. So yes, you can do those things until we get a media thing. And then once we get a media thing, then
And that creates that human presence that,
yes. And so until we get that, yes, I'm going to tell you, go ahead and use Flipgrid all you want. Some of those also will automatically caption, which is super important to have automatic captioning because that really helps with our accessibility standards. So yes, so you can. Also in discussion, so like I talk to myself right here. Well, I'll show y'all that one in a little bit, but when you do your introductions, like this one is just a sample, and it says, give me a post, and I want like 100 to 150 words. And some of my courses that I've taught or that I've helped design, I am not specific about how they do the introduction, and I will give them those resources, links to here's how you can go do an audio recording and upload it if you want this to be more like a podcast, or here's where you can go do a video and upload a video. And in the instances where I do that, I tend to also make sure that my introduction is a little bit more creative, because if you do it, they do it. It's part of that modeling. So there are lots of ways to do it. The video recording software that's within D2L for a student to use it and record is only 3 minutes. Which is great and not great. But it's great because it's only 3 minutes. So you will not have a student that rambles on for 20 minutes about how amazing they are, because I'm sure they're amazing. And there's nothing in the world we know better than ourselves, so we will talk about ourselves all day long. But it being 3 minutes means that it automatically limits what they can say and do. And then making sure that it uploads, because if they go over 3 minutes, it's going to stop at 3 minutes. When you upload it. Like, yeah, let's keep recording, but if you're mid-sentence, it will stop. So you have to be really consciously aware of that. So yeah, yes. Did that answer your question? Okay. Hey, that's way better. All right, so back here, looking at our theories, we have covered our theories. So we are gonna talk on down to some active learning. And I can walk around for this, so. I know y'all know what active learning is, but what do y'all think of when I say active learning? What is active learning to you?
Engaged.
Hands-on, minds-on, doing,
Okay,
practicing it.
right, experiential, heading into the direction of experiential.
Student-centered.
Is this, Frank, you were mentioning, I said I wasn't going to say names. You were mentioning about the student progress. This is where, as we're designing classes, are we thinking about, is our class correspondency or is it active? And the more active the learner is, the more engaged they're going to be and the more videos they're going to watch. But then that also leads into, are our videos, our text, our other open educational resources that we are loading, are they promoting that engagement? Are we setting up an environment for the student to be active in their learning, for them to be the one that is creating their next step in knowledge acquisition? Are we pontificating? Are we asking them to learn from us and other resources and each other, and are we setting up those platforms and experiences for them to do it? And that's where with the videos, you're always going to have some that aren't going to really watch them. Same way as you have students in your class that just don't engage in class. To sit in your class, it's a lot of money to not engage with learning. And you're always going to have a couple that do that. And all my advice is with that is don't let those two bother you, because they were going to be that way in every class, face-to-face, online. Their commitment to their learning is not where we think it should be. It's really upsetting when that's a graduate class and they're doing it. Because I'm like, you chose this and you do this, but okay. So I want to talk a little bit about looking at some of those authentic assessments and activities. that help create that active learning atmosphere. So when we think about it, what kind of assessments we're using in our course? Are we thinking about experiential components? Challenging our students' creativeness, really thinking about what we love best about our face-to-face class and how can we help make that be in an online environment. Types of assessments, I know y'all know these, right? I left quizzes off. I'm an anti-quiz person. I know, it's fun, right? Y'all will support me in that. I have put a few examples in here of some activities I've seen in some classes. And I'm not saying that these are necessarily ones that you would need. I'm not entirely sure what classes you teach, and I'm not sure how you could use the Oregon Trail in your class. But in a history class, when you're talking about manifest destiny, you totally use Oregon Trail in the class. So did y'all know that this exists? By the way, it's that time of year, so y'all need to go make your donations to the Internet Archive. So on the Internet Archive, you can play the old school version of Oregon Trail. We can. No, yeah, it will actually, like, you can actually shoot buffalo with your space bar. It's so cool. So this activity, the way that we set it up, y'all are all having flashbacks to Oregon Trail right now, aren't you? You're like, oh my God, I loved Oregon Trail. So this was an activity that when I was working with a faculty member and we were trying to figure out how to help in a survey of history class students be engaged, it's a 100 level, 1,000 level class, and the students just really were not. It's a lot of information. It's a 1,000 level class. How do we help get them engaged? So about halfway through the semester when they got to Manifest Destiny, I was like, why don't we give this a shot and just see what happens? Students loved it. Most of them had never played Oregon Trail because I am older than they are. And so for them, it was the first time to do it. But the assignment, the way that it was set up, was that they had to play it twice. And they had to play it as two different professions, because there's 3 different professions. And they have to play it as 2 different professions. And then in a discussion, they have to talk about their experiences as both of those professions. What happened? What did you learn? What were your challenges? And then how do you see this connecting with the readings about Manifest Destiny? It was a stretch to get that part in there. How are you? Welcome. And then as an additional assessment activity for this, they got to write a reflection. And reflections are a lot more engaging and active because it's about the person and making that personal connection. And it talked about their feelings about who they were in the game and what happened to them. And it also encouraged them to look at some societal norming because this game has got some issues with some things that might have been okay back then but are most definitely not okay now. And they weren't okay back then, but I don't know that we really talked about it. So it gave the students an opportunity to look at that in terms of society today and where do you see some of these things today and how would you tie your experiences to things in our history now and making those connections. And some of the students came up with some pretty awesome stuff. Some of the conversations talked about, as a farmer, you have less money, so you have the struggles of money, but you're slightly more resourceful and can fix a wagon wheel. And a banker might not be able to fix a wagon wheel. So what does that look like in today's society? And how do we make those connections? And the students loved it, and they all got engaged from that point on in the class, and it was the best part of the evaluations of that faculty member. It does not cost anything to use an activity like this, but it really created an opportunity for those students to connect with each other. And then apparently some of them went and started playing other games on the Internet Archive because there's lots. In case y'all are looking for your old school 90 games.
I didn't even know about this. Is really interesting.
Yeah. There's some great stuff out there that like games and things like this. And not everybody's big into gamification or game playing within courses, but sometimes it's fun to just throw one in there. because students really do respond well to something, and they don't always realize at first that they're learning, which is awesome when that happens. So play is very important to learning. So, and college students sometimes forget that, but that's really how we make a lot of our connections. So, yeah, absolutely should check out the Internet Archive sometime. And I don't know that I listed it. I'm going to talk about the resources we provide through instructional design later, and I don't know that I actually listed it because it's been a while since I wrote my list. But one of the things we actually will help do, if you are stuck on finding an open educational resource, we are more than happy to help you look for some of those, because we know a few sneaky corners of the internet that might have some things available for free. So if that is the case, we are happy to assist with that.
It's funny, I just looked up online library games, and there's this web page here with just lists of things like alphabet book game, alphabetic order, basic Dewey Decimal, call numbers. They're all games related. I mean,
Yeah.
Huh.
Increase engagement.
yeah, exactly.
And what was the website you went to?
Oh, this way, it's at pobschools.org.
EOB?
POB,
POP?
B as in Bob. Yeah. And, or if you just, all I did was Google online library games. And so there's all sorts of stuff.
And you can ask students to if an app is free, you can ask them to download it. You have to have a secondary assignment just in case the student doesn't have a device that allows apps, but there's not very many of those. And we can usually help you with that too, if you're kind of stuck in how to come up with one of those. We don't mind sitting with you and trying to figure out a way to give you an assessment that is similar and gets to the same learning outcome, but doesn't require that. So the second one I wanted to show you, hopefully will actually, hey, it does, look at that. So that is the Rutherford County Courthouse. I know you can tell that from looking at the top of it. So that is the Rutherford County Courthouse. And one of the faculty members I worked with, it was for a public safety class, and it was on crisis response management. So not necessarily crisis response management, something we have to do in all of our classes, but we have to be aware. And it was that someone is coming to the court that is a high celebrity, and they have been charged with something. It's like a case study, and they've been charged with something, and there's going to be people there protesting on both sides. So how would you, as a public safety professional, create an environment around the courthouse to provide safety for the professionals within the courthouse and both sides of the protest? So we played around a lot, and what they could take their device and go and go to, and it wasn't required that they use a specific one. They were able to use one in any environment where they lived, because it was online class, so they lived all over the place. So they were able to use ones where they were. But if they didn't have the access to a device, they could use Google, and then you can put pins and you can create different images within a Google map to show where you would set up barricades and traffic flow and where you would station professionals. So it gives the students that opportunity. Ironically enough, right after this activity was when the Gatlinburg fire happened, and the students who had just taken this class, a lot of them got deployed to Gatlinburg. And when they got back, they told the faculty member how much they had used it. And how awesome it was that they had just done this activity in their class, and then they went and implemented it that week with the Gatlinburg fire. So, which is really great when you can do that. So the courthouse is one I could use because I couldn't think of a program off the top of my head, and I will totally look into this, but creating positive classroom environments. I assume somebody teaches, I don't know if it's one of y'all, but somebody in the program teaches that. So you could actually do something similar to that with creating your classroom environment, that they could use an online resource to where are you putting your chairs, where are you putting your tables, where are you creating your reading nook or your, all of those things like that. And they would actually have to design a classroom. And they can do that online, which means they don't actually have to physically be in a classroom in front of students moving things around. They could show you and then use that imaging and what they create and explain to you why. they did that. And so that's something that then when they get out and they're ready to teach and they have to create a positive classroom environment, at least we hope it's positive, right? That's our goal, positive. When they have to create a positive classroom environment, they have this example of something they did in a classroom, and you were able to provide them with that feedback about, well, here's some things to think about. This is great. Let's look at this, and really be able to talk to them about it in a safer environment than where children are actually present at the time and you're just figuring it out. And then the last one is one that I actually use this a lot with discussions. And all it is just a link to TED Talks, just because I wanted to use it as an example, and we won't stay on that. But I think I'll talk about this in a second too with discussions. With that, I tend to have my students sign up for a week that they facilitate discussion. And they go out and find a resource that they then create the week of discussion. So it could be an article, it could be a video that they find, it could be a podcast, it could be just about anything that's out there. And they go and create, like you have your initial post and everything set up in D2L, but then the very first response is the one that is the student that is in charge for that week. And they post, and then everyone else responds to that. And so that student is helping with the discussion, keeping them engaged, keeping it current, and they're communicating with each other. You're there, you can see what's happening, and you can engage as is appropriate, but it really creates that opportunity for them. And I think that helps a lot, especially with future teachers, because it helps provide that confidence of being in a teaching environment, and using that opportunity. That can also be used for if you have them video presentations. Again, we need that media software. If you have them video presentations or teaching examples, that if you have them be the ones that do it, then others can comment on that and provide them with that feedback and some peer assessment in that too, which is pretty huge. So you'll see in this that I listed a few things that you could use these different ones with. So discussions, reflections, we can actually set up a debate in your class. Know that it would be asynchronous, but we can set up a debate. And then with that one, you could use audio, video, images, infographics. Let the student be creative with how they do it. So we talked about this a little bit. This was one of the things that y'all really wanted to know about engagement opportunities. So how many of you have Zoom? How many of you have access to Zoom? So you have to be an online instructor to have the full professional version of Zoom. But once you're teaching even one class online, you've got it. So we'll figure that out. So until then, though, it's just limited. You can have it, but it's limited. The professional, all it is that it's unlimited recording opportunities. The one that is not pro, I think it's 30 minutes per recording session. So Zoom is a fantastic way to create digital office hours, to have conversations with a student that you talk through email, you've even tried over the phone, but it's just not making that connection. You can totally Zoom in with them. And have that face-to-face with them and have that connection. It is a great way for you to have some casual video connections that you post in your news announcements, updates about the class, things like that. It can work great for introductions to topics, especially if it's a topic that you know people get hung up on something within the information. Kind of doing a 1 or 2 minute little video that you can post for them is great for that. This one, I have to go through it the other way. One moment, please.
Could I just add one other software idea for?
Absolutely.
I use Screencast-O-Matic to record all my videos.
Screencast-O-Matic.
Screencast-O-Matic, yeah. I record all my videos on my laptop. The nice thing is that you have the PowerPoint behind you, and then you have yourself in a little screen with you actually speaking to the students. The other nice thing about it too is that I will plug in a separate camera into my laptop, and I can switch between cameras. So I can use the other camera as like a document viewer. So, for example, this one course I'm designing, which is an advanced cataloging class, students are going to have to catalog artifacts, but they don't actually have physical access to them. But what I can do is I can use the camera to show all the various attributes of the artifact so that they know what they need to include as part of their bibliographic record while describing it. It is free but limited to 30 minutes. However, the year-long subscription costs $15, and it is unlimited. So that's, I mean, for $15, it's really worth it.
Do you use it to shoot your screen too, or you
No, you can, it actually does show your screen when you're doing it, and I can actually, what I can do is I can show you, maybe not right now, but how about when this is done? I'll show you one of the videos I've recorded for one of my courses, and then you can check it out that way and see what you think. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah. And also, God, we need those media platforms because then they would be free.
Sorry, which one?
The ones that we're trying hard to get for campus, because then that would be free. The two that we're looking at have 5 captioning capabilities. It's hard to imagine 5 things I need to capture at one time in a video, and then they're also unlimited recording. And it would be free. So I'm trying. I promise I'm trying. Y'all can talk to people that are important and let them know. Yeah, anything like I use Camtasia because the university put it on my device.
The only thing I don't like about Camtasia is that if you need to change something in the middle of a video, you have to go right to the very beginning and re-record the whole video.
Yes.
With Screencast-O-Matic, what I do is after every portion that I have recorded, I pause it. I switch screens on PowerPoint and then resume. But then what it does is it sets up a marker on your video so that you can go back and basically extract that little piece you want to re-record and re-record something else in its place. So, but Camtasia, unfortunately, you have to go all the way to the beginning, and then that's because I never used that consent. We had a different Articulate. Articulate allowed you to do that same thing where you could go to a certain point, take out that portion, re-record it, and then put it back together again. So, yeah.
Yeah, Camtasia's not the best, but it's what I have. It's what I have. So we were talking about video, right? Video, that's what we were talking about. So the assignment one is in here, but because this is not a real class, I can't actually show you. But within assignments, either discussion or Dropbox assessments, there's an audio-video feedback button that you can just push that button and record your feedback to that student. It also has a limit, but it's not quite as short as the 3 minutes. Though much longer than that, and the student kind of starts to zone out anyway, so you're okay with that. Just you have to have access to a laptop or a microphone or camera in your office. So if you have a desktop that doesn't have a webcam or built-in microphone, then it's a little bit of a struggle, but they sell some really great ones that are only like $40. So you may be able to convince somebody, or maybe you can borrow one from somebody. Or if you have a laptop, like all of you that have laptops, you could just use your laptops to record your feedback. And then I talked earlier about using memes. So I sometimes will use memes in my feedback. Not always this one, but this one is one of my personal favorites. And all that is that when you're giving your student your feedback, if something you're giving them makes you think of something that is funny, or something that will be kind of light and spirited and fun, go ahead and give it to them, because that will make them, again, connect with you on a much more personal level. And y'all are all going to have access to this here in the very near future, so y'all are welcome to use that as much as you want. I send it to my sister about once a week. Yeah, she's good fun. She's got an engineering background, so you got to do what you got to do with that. So the next one was replacement strings. That was what the thing where it said my name on the front page. So here are these little brackets. I don't know that y'all can see them. It's the, they have a name, and for the life of me, I can't think of what it is. But it's the ones, they're those right there? Yeah, they're the squiggly ones. Yeah, the squiggly ones. So that all you have to do in your information is put those in there. And then I have put the link to the replacement strings. These are the most common replacement strings that are used within D2L. It is simply just a link to what those replacement strings are. The only real thing to think about, first name is the one you're probably going to use the most. In a second, I'm going to talk about intelligent agents a little bit, and you will use some of the other ones. But first name is probably the one you're going to use most. It's the squiggly bracket thing. First name, no spaces, squiggly bracket close.
Capitals, caps are important.
No. It's happier with you if you use them.
This kind of reminds me of field names for a relational database.
Yes.
And if that's the case, then I would recommend that you do use caps exactly as they have it in there, just so that because I assume that that is drawing from a database
It is.
somewhere.
It is, and it will pick up the other ones, but it doesn't always pick them up quite right. And make sure that you actually type out first, because F name will just show up as F name in brackets. And your students will be like, I'm not really sure why you're calling me that, but so actually make sure that you are using those. Within that, so intelligent agents, do any of you know what intelligent agents are in D2L? So intelligent agents are something that you can set up before the semester even begins, and it will send out automated information to your students. Typically, we set up intelligent agents for if a student hasn't logged in, you can set it up so that it will send them an email. So you'll use some of these other strings. But if you want to do that, that is something that we will sit down with you and show you how to do it the first time. But because it's got lots of little parts to it, just because you have to go through and do some specific release conditions. And release conditions are sometimes, they take a little bit the first time. But you'll use them if a student hasn't logged in. You can use them if a student gets 100 on their very first assessment, or the first time they get 100, you can have them sent a congratulations email or a great job or whatever. In addition to your feedback, as soon as it recognizes that that student got 100%, it will automatically send that to them. And so you can have a little meme that sends out to them that's like, great job, so proud. If they miss an assignment, you can set it up so it will automatically send them a reminder that they have missed an assignment. So you can set them up for almost anything. I do encourage you to set them up before the semester starts, because once they're in there, and then you don't have to worry about it. And some of that individual time that y'all were talking about, that you spend so much time, so that looks like it's individual time to the student, but it's not. You did it one time at the beginning of the semester, but they're getting updates and announcements from you on a regular basis that are like, hey, don't forget, we're still here, do this. And it kind of makes a difference for them. So,
And the things you're talking about, can they be used just in regular D2L as well? Okay.
yes, and we're happy to help you set those up. It does not have to be an online class in order for you to use that. You just have to have D2L access. So yeah, any of your classes that you have, anything set up in D2L, we can help you set up some intelligent agents for that. And there are a ton that we can set up, and it's so nice. And it will remember them too. So like as you move when you copy from class to class, it will, oh my gosh, you're fine. When you copy from class to class, it copies too. So once you do it, you do it.
Should we contact you individually to do that, or would it be better to do it as a group?
If y'all want to do it as a group, we can totally set up a time that we sit down and do that. I'm happy to come over and just have a time that you all have your computers with you and we just go through and we set them up. I'm happy to make that happen if y'all want to. So like a lunch and learn in January, right before the semester starts. Absolutely. No, I'm happy to come and help y'all do that. That's no problem at all. Okay, so discussions. We talked a little bit about students as facilitators. Engage topics. the one I use with that is my favorite example, and I hope none of you were the ones that wrote this class. I don't think you were. It was a Tennessee eCampus class on globalization, so it's probably not y'all. The discussion was, what is globalization? So every student sent a discussion post that was the almost exact definition that was on the first page of the textbook. That is not an engaging discussion. So thinking about your topics and looking at that same one, utilizing the definition from our text on globalization, where do you see globalization in your community? Creates a much better discussion. And then following that up with very directed prompts. The prompts are what helps students with the replies. Do you ever run into an issue where they're all like, yeah, great job, like what you said there, and they repeat what the student said, they're not really adding anything new? If your prompts allow them to go to that next level and encourage them to engage with what it was the student was supposed to have talked about. Sometimes the supposed to is what's important there, they don't always. What they were supposed to have talked about, then your discussions will be to that next level on their own because the student will be answering a second set of questions. And typically that's where in ones that I work with, it's asking them what they see differently, what did they see from their own that was similar to what the student saw, different ways of looking at this next level, or from this additional resource that you use this week, how would you make this connection? And really just tying it to additional things. So utilizing OERs. OERs are open educational resources, so anything is free like the Oregon Trail or the library games. Utilizing those in your discussions that require the student to look at a video, listen to a podcast, and then talk about how they connect that information to what they got from the reading or what they got from the lecture or what they got from whatever else. Creating that secondary level also helps with ensuring that the person is the person when you are creating those additional levels, because if you add things in there about talking about your own personal experiences or how did you see this connection, or if you have them go find their own video to tie in to encourage additional discussion, you learn about them, and then if somebody else is doing it, it's obvious, you know it's not them because they did this. And then the fifth one, sometimes people don't like that I say that, but I say that a lot. Don't do them weekly just to do them weekly. Do discussions because there's a purpose. So I'm all about discussions, and if you spend the time creating really strong discussions, and I think weekly discussions are huge, and I think we should be able to do them. But having them just to have them is the students know that's what's happening. So if in your class it doesn't work to have 14, but it works to have 7 because you have 7 major thematic portions of your course, then do 7. I have my little thing in there, let's talk about contact and instruction hours. I actually added the contact hours chart that we use for online instruction that y'all are welcome to utilize. And then in that self-registration that I talked about at the beginning, that one that I haven't had a chance to upload, but I promise I will, is the contact hours presentation that I did with the LT and ITC, that we talked about what is contact and what is instruction and how is that measured. And that chart gives you a bunch. It's like 40, I think it's 40 different activities that can count as instruction in an online class, and also tells you what they equate to in terms of time. And there's a tab for undergraduate and a tab for graduate. So there it is. And it's a mashing of several different resources that are out there, but it is what some accrediting bodies use also to measure contact and instruction. So it's not just Kim, it's actually valid. It's out there for that information. And then peer assessments. I am a big fan of peers assessing each other, especially in upper division and graduate classes. I think it's really important. In first year classes, it's sometimes hard and helping them understand. This one is in here. It's big enough that you can see it. So there's a way that you can, when you're setting up your discussions, turn it on that allows for ratings. And you can make part of your rubric or part of your assessments that they have to rate a certain number of discussions and then provide feedback. So you can do that within D2L's discussions. And if you want to do that, we will sit down with you and show you how to do that the first time. But it will allow you to click on this little star and give a rating, and then you respond. So you can't just give a rating without a response, or that would have to be something in your rubric that you say, no, that you can't just put a grade and not say something. Like you have to rate, and that they have to rate a certain number of people, and then that can actually add into the grade that the student gets for that assessment. So it can count for that. So this was, I said earlier, it was me talking to myself. It is me talking to myself. Those are my children. I have 3 Great Danes, actually. Everybody always jokes that you could put a saddle on them, so their Halloween costumes actually are saddles. So those are my kids. Right, I graduated from Belmont, Western, MTSU, TSU, and I don't like pina coladas or getting caught in the rain. So, and those are the kind, I'm not going to share to that level with my first year experience students, but I do share with my students that I have Great Danes, that, this is who they are. I talk about them a little bit so that people know that aspect of me and who I am, because they're important to me. Because they're awesome, I think. They take up a lot of space, though, I can tell y'all that. Okay, and then here's your tips for success. And then I promise we're almost done, which is good because I'm doing pretty good on time. Okay, so I mentioned, I think, like 4 or 5 times. Y'all have to go back and like tally it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Please. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. I'm glad you could make it. It doesn't have to be perfect. The second one is one that I try to have those conversations with faculty pretty early on in the design and teaching process. The student is the end user. You are not the end user. The student needs the course to make sense. It needs to make sense to you so that you don't confuse yourself, but it is about the student experience. And if it makes sense to the student and how you laid it out, it will make sense to you because you're the one that laid it out that way. But you need to make sure that as you are thinking about where you're putting information and how you're assigning names for things and how you're creating your modules, that it will make sense to someone. I kind of try to equate it a little bit to when you walk into a classroom, you're not going to suddenly rip the screen off the wall and mount it to the floor. So when you're designing your class, design your online class so that some of those same aspects, they know where to go to start with. They know where you are in the classroom. They know where the front of their classroom is so that they're not spending time in their class trying to figure out how to take their class. Because that's sometimes when that happens, it leads to frustration. The students kind of shut down before the beginning. So it's okay to make mistakes. We do them in our face-to-face, or at least I do. And I equate that to when you're creating a video and the need for it to be perfect. So if you were to sneeze in your face-to-face class, would you stop and go back to the beginning of your lecture and start all over? Probably not. So if you do that in your video, do you want to re-record your whole video or just be like, oops, and move right on? And your students will be like, oh, hey, bless you. You won't hear it, but they will say, bless you. So it's okay, and maybe sneezing isn't the best example, but if you flub up a word, it is really okay. When I mess up words, I typically say, I am college. That's just what I say, because I mess it up. I'm like, yeah, I am college. And then go right on with whatever I was saying. And I have done that in videos, and my students have sent me messages. They're like, that's so funny that you did that. They're like, because now I feel like it's okay if I make mistakes too. And that's part of what makes you human and makes that connection, is that they don't have to be perfect. And that's part of the learning process. Feedback is, if not more, important in online courses. I know y'all know that. I know y'all know feedback is important. I know you know there should be multiple kinds of feedback throughout the semester. Just helping them understand what they're learning using rubrics, if you have them. I would assume y'all use rubrics more than some of the other colleges because you know what they are. So, really just making sure that your feedback is purposeful to the students. Try it. The worst thing that can happen is that it's not perfect. See steps 1 and 3. Right, I say that a lot, I know. Be creative. Technology changes all the time. So feel, and I know I mentioned this at the beginning too, so use it as much as you feel comfortable using it. We will teach you how to use some technologies if you want to try a new one and you haven't used it before. We will teach you how to use it. We also keep some, as time is passing and we are using more and more things, y'all will notice that I refer to us as we, even though I just told you that the second person won't be here until January. I'm practicing so that when there's more than just me, it's a we. We are creating some information as we go, and we are helping faculty do things in their classes that are some instructions that you can just have to put in your class for how different technologies are used from the student perspective and how they'll be able to use them within your class. So you don't have to figure that stuff out. We just tell you, here's this information, stick this in your class. This is how the student will download this device or this program. This is how they will engage with it, because your engagement is different than their engagement. So that saves you a lot of time with that. And then we kind of try to help you answer questions, especially the first time that you use it, if there's anything weird that happens. I mentioned that things change a lot in 5 years. There's a program in the state of Tennessee, not this institution, that their entire program still uses Flash Player. Yeah, I don't know how that's working out because it's not supported anywhere. So thinking about those things as you're using technologies and to keep that up to date. I know that this is the choir that I'm speaking to on this one, but aligning your outcomes, your activities, and your assessments. Right, I'm like, y'all, the alto section, I'm in my people here. So, having those conversations, right, all those degrees that I listed, they're all in education. So I get that. So making sure those actually happen and thinking about that in the design process. Keep a list of possible activities, whether that's on your phone, whether that's a legal pad you keep in your office, whatever it is. But as you have that moment of, I wonder if we can do this, or wouldn't that be fun if we could do that, write it down, let us know. And we can try to help you figure out a way to make that happen. I mean, that's how the Oregon Trail thing happened. That's how things like that. As somebody says, hey, I wonder if we can do this. And we go, let's see. And we'll help you figure that out. And that sometimes, too, we'll let you have some conversations with some of your colleagues about some of the interesting things that you're doing and things that you've thought about. And y'all may be able to come up with some pretty cool stuff between you, because, two heads better than one kind of thing. Prepare for online teaching. It's asynchronous, but you need to be prepared the same way you would for your face-to-face, because your students are going to have questions from week to week.
Especially if you pick up a course that's already been prepared by someone else.
Yes. If you get somebody else's developed class, you need to make sure that you are at least a week ahead of them. It'd be better if you're a little more, but you need to be prepared, because they're going to have questions. And they're going to have questions the day that information is available. So you need to make sure that you're prepared for that. And that also helps you look back through and make sure all your links still work and things like that before, because sometimes they just go down. We can check those things in January, and then on January 27th, they don't work anymore. So, it can happen, but that gives you that opportunity to do that. And then use us. We have a team, or will, by the time we get back in January. And we are here to help. We come to you, obviously. You can come to us too if you want to, but we will come to you. We will sit down with you so that we can figure out what's going on and help you from your computer so that you remember doing it. Because if you come to my office and I do it and I show you, when you get back, you won't remember any of what we talked about. So it's part of that psychomotor thing that we talked about in the beginning. And then you have an affective feeling about me when I'm not there and I did not help you. And then here are some of the services that we have available. This is just really the tip of the iceberg. So we have course design templates. We have started creating these so that if individual courses want to have us drop a template in, what that template has is some sample postings. It has a basic design. It actually is the Getting Started Course Introduction Module 1, 2, 3, and 4 of this one is actually what it looks like. And all those are different layouts that really fit within best practices of online learning, and allow for you to take a look at them and see if there's one that you like the best. If you do, we'll go in and set up a class for you. Absolutely, it's good to see you. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll actually go in and set up the class for you. And I don't mean the content. We're not going to choose your content. I mean, we go in and we say, oh, you want 7 modules? Here's seven modules. Here's how you wanted them laid out, and we will go set up your sub-modules for you and things like that for you. And depending on the level that somebody actually wants, we can help you all the way up through setting up your grade book and putting some of those informations, dumping some of those instructions for technologies, things like that. We're happy to help if somebody wants assistance with that. We're happy to do that. Course evaluation, what I mean by that is that we look through it and from a student perspective, so that when you look at your assessments, we will let you know that this is what we think you're asking us. Because if that's not what you're asking us, then you know that your instructions need to be changed a little bit, or a little bit more information needs to be provided. And we'll go through and double check links and make sure everything goes where it's supposed to. And that's, again, at the level that the faculty member wants it. Content loading, I did mention that we will actually put that in there if you want us to. So if you want to put together your class and you want us to help build your discussions and set up those ratings and all of those things like that, we will actually go in there and set those up for you. We won't make your content decisions, but we'll make your class look pretty. Copying courses from development shells to semester, that is something we will start offering on a limited basis in the spring. There's not enough of us to be able to offer it to everybody yet. But development classes, if somebody wants that, they are welcome to send us a message and we will make that happen. We will make your development shell live in the semester shell for the adjuncts or for you. And if you send us the dates, we can even set up dates. So we're happy to do stuff like that. We have some D2L training. It's not the full D2L training that the FITC does, but we will do more targeted individual training. If somebody needs something specific, or like when we were talking about the intelligent agents, or if you want to know how to do the ratings and discussions, we are happy to do any of that kind of stuff too. If somebody has zero knowledge in how to use D2L, we are still happy to sit down and help you. But the boot camp is probably a good place to start with that. And then we have professional development opportunities and editing. And when I say editing, I mean we actually will go look through your class if you want us to and check for spelling and like things like that. I mean, I still miss spelling things too. I give my students extra credit when they find my mistakes. They totally think it's awesome because stuff happens. So those are some of the services that we provide. There's a lot more that we can do. That's just the ones that are most common and the greatest need. But if there's something else that y'all want, just let us know. We'll figure it out. So what questions? I've managed to run off everyone. So classes, right? So what questions do y'all have at this point? Just a ton of information. You're like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, lot to digest, but we may have you come back and looking at specific aspects. I know we've got an EDD program that's going to be online. You're familiar with that. So and I probably want to get with you at some point about the intelligent
Absolutely.
agents. Though.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can definitely do that. Yep. I'd love to. No, you're welcome. Thank y'all for having me. I really appreciate it.